Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the #1 professional wrestling radio show in Las Vegas. This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Going bell to bell with the best in professional wrestling news, entertainment, and lots of Sin City surprises from inside the squared circle. Now, let's get to all the exciting pro wrestling action and bring on the host. Here is Mark Hoke.
Yeah, that's me. What's going on, everybody? How are we doing today? Beautiful. Actually, it's a cloudy Sunday morning here in Las Vegas for the Mark Hoke Show here on KDAWN 101.5 FM, the talk of Las Vegas. Very excited to have you all joining us today for the best in pro wrestling news and entertainment on the planet. It's just a universal takeover. That's what we do here. Very happy to have you on. Coach Rosey, Josh Rosenbaum from Ad Free Shows on with us right now. Coach, what's going on with you? You were dodging some snow today in Arizona.
Yeah, I came up to Flagstaff, Arizona to come visit my son who's a junior in college for my wife's birthday. So it was beautiful to wake up to a white November.
Well, there you go. Yeah, we don't get to see much of that here in Vegas, that's for sure. I've seen 3 snowfalls of any significance in Las Vegas since I've been here for, 11 plus years now. So kind of got to drive up to Mount Charleston for that. But, well, enjoy the snow, my friend. That sounds like a blast. We will be joined in the next segment by CBSSports.com Shakiel Mahjouri, of course, an expert in MMA and so many other things, but certainly does a lot of wrestling too for CBSSports.com. Has a very interesting article. He did an interview with Bo Dallas from the Wyatt Six. We're going to ask him about what that interview was like, and I'm sure that was that could be a very emotional interview to do. That's for sure. So we'll look forward to talking to him about everything he's got going on in the next segment. So we're, of course, coming off WWE Crown Jewel, but there was some other stuff that happened too, and I want to make sure we hit on this a little bit before we bring in Shakiel. AEW, a great night on AEW Fright Night, man. That was a terrific show, and we had New World Tag Team Champions as Private Party sends the Young Bucks into hiatus. They're going back to the offices, mostly because I believe it's Nick's got a busted up shoulder. But they are going to be taking some time off. But Private Party are your New World Tag Team Champions. Orange Cassidy will be challenging for the AEW World Championship at Full Gear against Jon Moxley. And what has become one of the most viewed segments in a while for AEW, Bobby Lashley makes his debut staring down Swerve Strickland. A pretty good show on AEW on Wednesday night, Coach.
I loved it. I'm an AEW Day One guy, and Dynamites have been good, but they haven't been great. And this Halloween episode that we had, Fright Night, brought back every reason why I love AEW.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and to see Private Party after 5 years in that organization, finally getting a world tag team title run. What a terrific thing for them. I mean, I remember back when they had the tag team tournament and Private Party upset the Bucks in the first round. It was like, oh my God. And then they didn't push them any further than that. And they, and injuries have derailed those guys a little bit. They've both gotten hurt, but it's terrific to see two guys who were AEW originals finally get their reward. That was fantastic.
Yeah, and a lot of people complain that there aren't a lot of storylines in AEW, that they hotshot a lot of stuff, but that match really told the story of the 5 years of Private Party. They had everything against them, like back in year two or three when they were under the control of Money Matt, and they were getting 70% of their income taken by Matt Hardy. I mean, everything has been against them these 5 years, and it was setting up for a split up, but thank God we still got Private Party, and they're the new tag team champs. And the Young Bucks showed a lot of class at the end of the match by shaking their hands and giving them their rub because they are day one, and a lot of people do enjoy Private Party, and it's their time. Let's see if Tony really gives them a nice run, because last night they've already been entered into a little mini feud with FTR, so we'll see where that goes.
Oh, man, that is going to be something else. That is going to be something else. But, Isaiah Cassidy, Mark Quinn, and of course, a lot of people were pushing for that team to be split up. They wanted Cassidy to go on his own, and they teased it. But for once, they don't break a tag team up. They stick together and get it done. So that was a terrific win for them. But everybody's going crazy. Bobby Lashley, MVP, picked up the cell phone and said, we need the big gun in here. And Bobby Lashley, and by the way, I don't know who his tailor is, but that guy should be rich. Put an ad out or something for who this guy is that makes Bobby's suits, because he always looks sharp. But Bobby Lashley comes out and gets into it with Swerve Strickland, and people are very excited about this. More excited than I really anticipated. I was excited about it because I'm a big Lashley fan. I think the combo of him and MVP are terrific. But, man, the enthusiasm for Bobby Lashley coming to AEW is pretty heavy, man. It's shocking. What do you think, Coach, about how the fan reaction to Bobby Lashley coming in to AEW?
Who didn't like the Hurt Business? They were the stuff in WWE a year or 2, 3 years ago, however many years ago it was. And to see that carry over to AEW, and to almost make this where Nana is in it, and they're trying to take away Swerve, and how we're all supposed to get along, and let's do this, brother. And it's almost like the battle of supremacy. Is Swerve gonna go over to them? Is he gonna give up on his family, which he said he hasn't? Both of them are rappers. Swerve's a rapper. I was at MVP's concert Sunday night in Phoenix. There's a lot of ways that this can go, and I'm all there for it. And I can see somebody joining Team Swerve, and I can't even imagine who it is, but I'm there for the watching. I'm excited for it. I thought that Shelton Benjamin Swerve match was a little quick, but it was the only way that they were going to get Bobby in the house.
Yeah, and one thing that really stands out to me, and you were talking about the Hurt Business, and now they're the Hurt Syndicate in AEW, is people really had a feeling that something got spoiled with the Hurt Business when they tore it apart. And they had a chance to put it back together. They didn't do it. And so many people just thought that group was awesome. You had Bobby Lashley. You had Shelton Benjamin, who was wrestling incredibly well. Even though he's getting up there a little bit in age, he still just performs at such a high level. It's amazing. And Cedric Alexander, guy up and coming, of course, very popular in Ring of Honor. And, they just kind of went, we'll just break it up, just like they always do in WWE, it seemed like. And for them to get a second chance, I think that's part of what this enthusiasm is all about. That they are thrilled to see a group that they felt like never should have split reassembling. And unfortunately, Cedric's not going to be there because he's re-signed with WWE. But who knows who they're going to bring in to replace him. But I think that's a lot of what is behind this enthusiasm, is we got something at the back that should have never been taken away.
Right, and AEW hasn't really done very well with these big muscle guys. They kind of dropped the ball with Wardlow, and to have somebody of Bobby Lashley and Cedric, not Cedric, but, big, strong, muscular guys that are believable, that that can go into any bar or any club and just tear the heads off of people. I'm looking forward to that dominant person. Moxley's dominant, but he's not that like Brock Lesnar type that can just annihilate somebody. Bobby Lashley's that guy in AEW.
And I think it's interesting, too, that now we have I believe they're now calling themselves the Death Riders. And you've also got the Elite, even though the Bucks are going to be gone for a little bit. It seems like they're going to be setting them up to be coming back after Moxley's group. But this is another group, too, that is going to be very prominent in AEW. And I'm curious to see where the three of them collide, whether, in the ring, but also in terms of booking, how you handle, three pretty dominant groups of professional wrestlers all at the same time. It's not like the old days in the NWA where it was the Four Horsemen and then everybody else was kind of hanging around. These are three legit groups of top talent. Somebody's got to win out in terms of, who people are going to be more interested to see, or just, in the booking room, how do we handle this? I think that's going to be one of the real tricks for AEW, is handling three dominant factions like that.
And who's going to be the face of the Elite now with the Young Bucks being gone? Is Jack Perry going to take the mic, or is someone going to be filling in for the Elite? A lot of things that are up in the air as we move on to Full Gear.
Yeah, and the tricky part for Jack Perry is going to be that apparently they're going to be bringing the Bucks back as the baby faces that save the day. Jack Perry's no baby face right now. I mean, far from it. And that could create some interesting issues for AEW in the booking room too. So we'll see how it turns out, but that was a big day for them. So congratulations to Bobby Lashley for getting a chance to return to the ring in AEW. And of course, once again, we've got Shakiel Mahjouri coming up from CBSSports.com. But one more topic to hit. Apparently, Ring of Honor is going to be, they're working on getting their own show. That may have been what this component with True TV was all about. Of course, they are part of the Warner Brothers Discovery family of networks. And I'll just say this. If that's the plan, it's about time. It's about time. Give them their own TV show. Separate everybody. I love Ring of Honor, and I love these guys and what they've been doing, but I don't love it on AEW TV. I don't. I want it separate. I want it to be treated as its own organization as much as they possibly can. And, if it ends up being their NXT, it ends up being their NXT. But, Coach, your thoughts on this possible deal for Ring of Honor be going on True TV?
I love it, and here's my prediction. The first general manager or commissioner is going to be Bryan Danielson.
Ooh.
And they are going to bring the mystique, the honor, and the quality of matches and the storylines that the fans of Ring of Honor through the early 2000s became accustomed to. Make Nigel the lead announcer, give him some type of role in it, and bring back Ring of Honor to what it once was, because that was one of the greatest promotions of all times in the early 2000s. They had some bangers.
Ring of Honor renewed my love in wrestling, because I was, in all candor, I was getting very bored with what a lot of things that WWE was doing. And lo and behold, I find this Ring of Honor on my CW, and I'm like, what is this? And I was hooked. And I was passionate about wrestling again, because I felt like I've got a good alternative, and these guys are incredibly talented, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm excited to see what they do with Ring of Honor. I think that's an interesting thought with Bryan Danielson, but it does explain the Chris Jericho title victory, because if they're looking to make a splash, Tony's going to try and catch lightning in a bottle again and put the title on somebody that the more casual fan is going to recognize. So that title change makes a little more sense at this point, because it sure seemed weird in the last week when Mark Briscoe lost it. So, and
Athena's been the women's champion for quite some time. Maybe Indy or Tegan can come in the Ring of Honor and stir things up and become a Ring of Honor champion right off the bat.
That would be interesting. But I, and you bring her up, and it's just amazing that they seem to feature almost everybody in Ring of Honor on AEW TV except her. You never see her, and she has been on this incredible run of matches. Phenomenal. And, they just kind of leave her there. And I don't quite understand that thought to at least not put her on every once in a while. I mean, that was kind of weird to me, but she has just been absolutely amazing.
I agree.
Yep. So we'll see what happens there with our good friends over at Ring of Honor. All right. And with that, we are going to take our next break here on the Mark Hoke Show. And when we come back, oh, man, I got the big dog from CBSSports.com. Hopefully he won't punch me. I'm going to try to avoid that, but we'll see how it goes. Shakiel Mahjouri joining us on the Mark Hoke Show coming up in our next segment for the rest of the way. Of course, Coach Rosey from Ad Free Shows, Josh Rosenbaum also on as well. Stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
Looking for high-quality custom screen printing in Las Vegas? Look no further than Off Grid Creations. Need a few custom t-shirts for a local event, band merchandise, or family reunion? We've got you covered. Large order of uniforms for your staff, sports team, or club? We can handle that too. Our experienced team will work closely with you throughout the entire process from design consultation to final product. Call us at 661-300-1115. That's 661-300-1115. Or visit our website at off-gridcreations.com. Get a free consultation today.
1015 FM KDAWN. This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Here again, your host, Mark Hoke.
All right, let's get back to it. Hour number 2 continues of the Mark Hoke Show here on KDAWN 1015 FM, the Talk of Las Vegas. Also streaming on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. Make sure you download that thing right now. And Gingerbread Men will come to life, and it's going to be a happy, wonderful day for you, I promise. Even though that could be a little scary. But download the app. There's so many terrific shows on there from KDAWN and everywhere around the planet. So get that thing today. And, of course, we're also streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. For all of you out there that are live streaming the show, we certainly do appreciate that as well. Give us a subscription, like all that fun stuff. And you're going to like what we've got coming up here because we have our next guest on the show. Coach had to duck out, by the way. The snow was getting his Wi-Fi. But we have Shakiel Mahjouri from CBSSports.com, and I'm very happy to have you on the show, sir. Oh, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. I know you're an MMA guy.
Not me.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Mark Hoke Show. I do appreciate it. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. For those that aren't aware of your background, since it's the first time on the show, you got to tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, as it pertains to what we're here for today, I cover combat sports for CBS Sports. So that's MMA, that's pro wrestling, that's boxing. We dabble with a little bit of stuff here. Everyone's got their hands in different pots, but I'd say that's 95% of what I'm doing these days.
It was funny. I was thinking about this yesterday that having pro wrestling on sites like CBSSports.com, ESPN, and so on, if you'd have told me that was going to happen 15 years ago, I'd have told you you're nuts. I mean, that's just got to be exciting that wrestling has gotten so mainstream that a guy like you has a job constantly writing on CBS Sports. It's really neat.
Yeah, and especially with sort of the further mainstreamification of pro wrestling into these larger entities. I'm talking about TKO, right? The parent company now of UFC and WWE. We're seeing WWE move to Netflix. It's becoming very much like ingrained in the media cycle, which I think is a good thing because, you can never entirely get away from that reputation that pro wrestling as sort of a sports adjacent athletic presentation. Like, it's always going to kind of be that redheaded stepchild, right? It's not quite pro sports. It's not quite strict scripted entertainment. And so you'll always kind of get your naysayers. But I can tell you that particularly during the pandemic, when everything else was shut down, there were no sports, productions were getting shut down left and right. Like, WWE was a lifesaver. AEW as well, but especially WWE was a big lifesaver for a lot of these major media publications that suddenly were gutted from 90% of the sports that they rely on for web traffic. So WWE coming in clutch.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I remember that time, and it was man, that was not easy producing a sports show during the pandemic. Oh my God. You know, I mean, some of the stuff that we were talking about on shows was just ridiculous. I mean, you know, what somebody was having for dinner and things like that. It was miserable. So yeah, God bless WWE and AEW for pulling us through on that for sure. Well, we had Crown Jewel yesterday, and before I get into any individual matches, Shaq, what were your thoughts overall on the card?
You know, this is a debate that my colleagues and I have often, where some of my colleagues seem to think that the WWE has started to kind of like write off these international shows, particularly the ones that take place in Saudi Arabia. You know, even the Crown Jewel Championship, I don't know what sort of conversations were had between WWE and Riyadh season about helping Crown Jewel stand out moving forward, but we went from a place where, you know, you were getting The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels and the Ghost of Yokozuna in these sort of dream matches that only money can buy, and now we're at a place where they're functioning more like traditional pay-per-views. I argued the opposite. I like the fact that now we're getting actual progression of storylines instead of what I sort of deem to be an extravagant, glorified house show where the things that were happening at Crown Jewel were having no impact on week-to-week television. I kind of like where we're at. If I were to give it a grade, you know, solid 7 or 8 out of 10. I don't think they had... Crown Jewel was kind of in a weird spot, right? Because now we've got a arguably bigger pay-per-view as a storytelling device in Survivor Series just a few weeks away. My hometown of Vancouver. And You're coming off of Bad Blood. So, you know, solid 7 out of 10. I think the Bloodline match set the groundwork for what we're expecting. I think Cody and Gunther, although there was no doubt about the in-ring product, I feel like they over-delivered relative to sort of the short build they had. It was solid. It was solid.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought up about the place of Crown Jewel, because we were just talking about that with Coach Rosey and Brad Gilmore in the last hour. That while there is some storyline advancement, I do feel like it's kind of just its own event in a lot of ways. That it is segmented, and a lot of these international shows, they've taken the PLEs and made them, you know, a great event for everybody that's not getting a chance to see them, which, you know, energizes everybody. And these crowds are just dying for this excitement because they know they may not get it again. But Crown Jewel is in such a weird place, and I don't know. I mean, I get excited about it, and then sometimes I feel like it was okay. Yeah, it was there. You know, we did some neat stuff. And I, you know, the belt and the jewelry and everything, cool. But then I felt like Gunther got just taken down just a touch with this thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it didn't have to be that way.
I've noticed a trend lately with, you know, I kind of saw this. I think having Solo's Bloodline overcome OTC's group was the right call in terms of story advancement, but especially with Cody Rhodes at Bad Blood and now here, I feel like there's rare opportunities to hand him a loss and sort of boost someone's profile where, you know, this is the second consecutive PLE where Cody Rhodes, the undisputed WWE champion, is in a match where his title isn't at stake. These seem like prime, rare opportunities to have someone go over on him, especially Gunther, someone who has developed this reputation for being the consummate wrestler's wrestler, the guy who's collecting King of the Rings and record-breaking Intercontinental title reigns. Like, this just made sense to me to give him a win over Rhodes, especially after Cody eliminated him in back-to-back Rumbles. I did not understand that decision because Rhodes is the face of the promotion right now. That is not going to change. It's going to be really hard to sort of hurt his mystique. I agree with you. I thought this was a really obvious opportunity to give Gunther something that's going to bolster his reputation and help kind of bring that world heavyweight title closer in line with the value of SmackDown's top prize. And I don't know if they were just trying to subvert expectations, but you don't always got to surprise people. Sometimes the obvious call is the right call.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a shame that Gunther's going to have to go out on Raw and say, I lost. And, you're building this monster. And even though it is to Cody, it still feels like, it's like Superman lost a fight. You know what I mean? And you had a chance to keep, and you brought up the balance of the two championships. And now all of a sudden we're back to Cody's title is, whether they tried it or not, is just a touch above the world championship, where I thought they had it in a good place right now, that both guys you were looking at them and saying, man, these champs, I mean, they're pretty equal. And now that may have shifted just a little bit. I mean, they did the best they could with it, but I mean, you could have had Kevin Owens pull a stunt or something like that, and if you wanted to, and give Gunther a cheaper win. But it just left me with a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth. I don't know why.
Yeah, and listen, I love the WWE is starting to incorporate more of these like classic mat wrestling finishes into their show, where it doesn't always have to be a dirty finish or a big move or 3 crossroads. It can be someone rolling over a sleeper hold into a pin. I love stuff like that. However, when your whole gimmick is the ring general, you're the ring general, you are the ultimate master of pro wrestling inside of the squared circle, is Gunther really the guy who should be taking a loss, being one-upped by like a traditional pro wrestling move? Cody's wonderful in between the ropes, but I don't think Gunther's the guy who should be getting outwitted in like a technical wrestling match.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll see what the fallout's going to be from that. And we're on Shakiel Mahjouri from CBSSports.com. Now, I wanted to talk about Bianca Belair a little bit too, because one thing that I did see a lot on social media was there's a real split on fans wanting to keep her in the tag division with Jade and continuing to elevate the women's tag team titles. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that are saying, man, Bianca's getting held back. We've got to get Bianca back in the singles run again, and, make her a world champion one more time. And so there's an interesting split between the fans on this. What do you think about that?
It's a shame it fell through. I actually had an interview ahead of SummerSlam, I think, in the works with Bianca Belair, which I was hoping to shed a lot of light on sort of her start and stop momentum under the sort of Paul Levesque regime of WWE Creative, because you'll remember that she was like a number 1 draft pick for SmackDown at the time. And when you do something, obviously these drafts are scripted, but the purpose of things like this are, one, to sort of help shake up the rosters on both Raw and SmackDown, create new match opportunities, create new creative storyline opportunities. But the reason you have this sort of structured order of who's getting drafted when is because you're identifying to the audience who the promotion deems valuable, who the promotion deems to be a top star. And so when you draft Bianca so high in that draft, you were telling me that she is a top talent that's going to bring value to the SmackDown brand. It's been a real shame to see sort of how much of an afterthought her and Jade have been as tag team champions. I think, Jade, people don't give enough grace to how much is expected of Jade relative to her pro wrestling experience, right? Like her entire journey of all of her growing pains and all of her development are happening in front of a worldwide audience. That's not the case for 99.9% of pro wrestlers. That being said, there is a certain expectation of you if you are being featured in the WWE on premium live events. And, Jade's still quite green and she has a lot of work to do. And at this point, it's becoming more the norm than the exception when there's a messy spot in a match that she's in. I worry that if you separate Bianca and Jade right now, that Jade's going to have a hard time standing on her own. I think she's going to be further exposed. I don't mind keeping the two of them together. I think there's a very cool aesthetic. There's a very cool dynamic. These are two strong, powerful women. They kind of almost give me, Macho Man Hulk Hogan vibes when I think about these sort of like mega powers of the women's division. I think there's a great feud to be had there when they do eventually split. I think you just need to start giving them some proper storylines. That's the thing that's been, there had been a lot of online backlash over the lack of black representation, particularly on the PLEs. But to me, it goes a little bit beyond that. It's not just that there isn't a ton of black representation on the programming, is that you're not seeing a lot of storylines involving black superstars, and particularly black superstars who are very, very talented. I think the Carmelo Andrade 7-match series has been awesome. It's been a great way to showcase both of them. But I'm curious to see what comes after that, because booking two guys to wrestle each other 7 times in a row is not difficult booking. It doesn't require a lot of care or thought. You just put them in there and let them do their thing. So more than anything, what I would like to see for Bianca and Jade and the women's tag team division as a whole and the men's tag team division is a commitment to more storytelling, because that's not what we're seeing, and that's exposing, I think, especially Jade, because all she has to lean on that point is her look and her in-ring abilities, and she's got an amazing stage presence, but she's still raw as a professional wrestler in between the ropes, and you're not giving enough opportunities for her to showcase her charisma, which she has a ton of, her intensity, which she has a ton of, and the same goes for Bianca. Give these girls a thoughtful storyline that they can work with for a few months, and I think you can remedy a lot of the problems we're seeing there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a situation where Jade's strengths aren't being magnified. You know, she is when she does a promo and you see her really putting her mind to it and putting the emotions into it. That's where you really get excited about watching Jade Cargill. And when it's just a pure wrestling match and there's not a lot behind it, it's kind of okay. And then people start, getting on her case. It would be fun to find a team somehow that could rival those two and really wreck them, bury them, and put them in a spot where they're going to have to fight back. And there's going to be something behind it. I think that's a terrific point. I really do.
That's what only good takes here, Mark.
Yeah, there you go. All right. And, but, like I said, overall, I would agree with your assessment on Crown Jewel. It was, there was some good wrestling on the card. I mean, but, it's, see, it drives me nuts because I've been thinking about this ever since I watched it. And I was like, yeah, it's in the 7 to 7.5 range for me. Just there's just not enough behind that card sometimes. And it just seems like every time I get excited about Crown Jewel, I just feel like, yeah, that was okay.
I mean, what are you looking at? Like, realistically, there were 7 matches on that card. 3 had really strong stories behind them, and what would it be? It would be the Bloodline. It'd be the Bloodline. It'd be Kevin Owens versus Randy Orton, which honestly I think was one of the better segments that they produced that night, even though the bell never rang. And then I'm not as interested in the Seth Rollins Bronson Reed story. It kind of just feels like a transitional feud for Seth, but yeah, you've got a couple really good storylines that they're working towards, and I thought the most impactful of all of it was probably that Randy Orton-Kevin Owens match that was not a match.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating to see where that ends up, because I feel like they're positioning Kevin as, I'm warning all of you guys, I'm warning you, but they're kind of making him look psychotic about it at the same time. It's such classic Kevin Owens kind of stuff, and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm just waiting for Randy to turn on Cody and all hell breaks loose.
I know. I really thought we were going to see Randy and Kevin collectively turn on Cody. So I'm curious how this sort of shapes out over the long run. But that's, to me, especially now that the Bloodline storyline is going to dominate any programming on Raw or SmackDown. That's just sort of the nature of things in the WWE, and as it should be. I think it's one of the best stories they've ever told. However, you have the face of the company, allegedly Cody Rhodes, and while some of the matches like him versus Kevin and him versus AJ were so great, just top-notch stuff, he hasn't had a lot to seek his teeth into with the storytelling, and just when the Kevin Owens thing was starting to look really good, I feel like we sort of pivoted to Randy and Kevin and then Cody and this Crown Jewel title. Cody versus Randy Orton, I think, is one of the most compelling stories you can tell with Cody Rhodes right now. And there's so much back catalog. There's so much history. I mean, Randy Orton is the person who brought Cody Rhodes as well as Ted DiBiase Jr. under his wings as part of Legacy. You have so much you can immediately draw off of, so much emotion, so much backstory. That's a feud that can carry SmackDown, I think, for quite a few months. And even if it isn't necessarily 1A, 1B with the bloodline and what they're doing, I think it would only be like a notch below at best. That's what I want to see. That's where I think Cody shines the most, is when he can tell a compelling story. And I don't think there's a more compelling story for him right now.
I have still been advocating that I want Cody and Orton at WrestleMania. I think that is
beautiful.
I think that's the match for Cody. I really do. I'm not excited about Cody and The Rock, and it doesn't look like Roman and Cody is going to happen again at WrestleMania. I mean, if Rock comes in, give me Roman Rock, give me Cody Orton, give me Seth and CM Punk, and
beautiful,
and tell me that you can charge that $900 to, well, I think it was up to $16,500 for tickets today, and you can slightly justify it. I mean, you give me those 3 matches, and I'm good.
I would, yeah. I mean, that's up there, I think, with some of the best WrestleMania posters of all time, if you got those 6 guys on it.
Yeah, I'm down for it. All right, we need to take a break, and when we come back, more with Shaq. Hey, that kind of works, doesn't it? And if I hit the right button, that's going to help too. I love producing my own show. It's just a blast. But hey, we're going to have more with Shakiel Mahjouri from CBSSports.com when we return to the Mark Hoke Show. Talk a little bit about this WWE ID stuff and some fun things on AEW too. Bobby Lashley's back. What does Shaq think? Stick around. We'll be right back.
101.5 FM KDAWN. You're listening to the #1 professional wrestling radio show in Vegas, The Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Now, here again is Mark Hoke.
All right, let's do this one more time. The best in pro wrestling news and entertainment on The Mark Hoke Show here on KDAWN, 101.5 FM, the Talk of Las Vegas, the Odyssey app, and, of course, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Give us some likes, follows, subscribe. Pretty easy to find. Just The Mark Hoke Show. #1 on Google and pro wrestling radio show searches. How about that? That's pretty cool. So we appreciate that. Shakiel Mahjouri from CBSSports.com joining us on the show, and very thrilled to have him here with us. We've got the new WWE ID program. We just had Brad Gilmore from Reality of Wrestling on. What were your thoughts when this program got announced? Good, bad, indifferent?
On the surface, I want to say that, look, pro wrestling is not a money-making endeavor until it is, right? For every Roman Reigns that's, raking in several $1 million, I don't know, 5, 10, 20, whatever it may be, you have most of the pro wrestling industry working side jobs. Even Gunther was telling me that he was prepared to retire from pro wrestling in Germany, and he was only able to keep wrestling by convincing the promotion in Germany that he was with, WXW, to bring him in as a coach for their training facility. So this is a tough gig to make a living in, and it's certainly a labor of love. So any opportunity, any method that's going to sort of allow young pro wrestlers cutting their teeth to prioritize their dreams and get a little bit of support, whether that's financial or opportunity, getting their foot in the door, I'm all in. My one area of concern is it really feels... You have sort of standout promotions like GCW, but for the most part, it kind of feels like the thriving independent wrestling scene of sort of, the early to mid-2000s is kind of dying. I don't know if it's because WWE and AEW now owns such a large share of the talent pool. I'm sure that has something to do with it. So I'm always a little trepidatious about the trickle-down effect for regional and independent wrestling schools, wrestling promotions, etc. when you start seeing a program like WWE ID enter the space. But I'm happy to know that there's certain professional wrestlers starting their journey who are now going to get opportunities and sort of breathing room to put their all into this where they might not have been able to do so before.
Yeah, it is a terrific opportunity. I do wonder about the whole of independent wrestling, though, because it does feel like, to me, that WWE is picking some winners out of the group, you know, and I asked Brad Gilmore if there was a criterion selection, or criteria for selecting and getting into this. And, you know, it wasn't, you know, it's, hey, you know, we have a good reputation, you know, Booker T's been with us for a long time. But what about the guys out there like, you know, one here, Future Stars of Wrestling here in Las Vegas, that has produced some great people? They're not a part of the program. Revolver isn't a part of the program. Now, how do you get involved in that so it doesn't look like you're necessarily playing favorites? Now, there are some ones that certainly wouldn't deserve that opportunity. But this is going to be interesting to see how it unfolds and if it works out the way they want it to work out. So I'm fine with it. Just want to make sure that it plays out correctly for everybody.
Yeah, I think overall it'll be a net positive, just in the sense that I think this new era of WWE understands how, especially this WWE that is now looking outward towards a more global approach to premium live events on overseas markets and things like that. Like, Gunther told me that for him, the idea of coming to the U.S. and pursuing a career with the WWE only really became realistic or sustainable once NXT UK started up, right? So at the very least, when you have the WWE branching into different levels and different markets in all aspects of professional wrestling, from the talent development side to the international market side, you're putting an influx of cash and opportunities there. So I do think we're going to see some short-term positives, but like you said, particularly as it impacts the independent scene, I wonder what this all looks like 5 or 10 years from now.
Yeah, agreed. Now, you got to interview Bo Dallas, and I read that piece on CBSSports.com. Very interesting, and this is one of those that, you know, this isn't just talking about a wrestler and what's going on with the ring. There is a massive crossover between real life and what's going on in WWE. Tell us a little bit about doing that interview, because it had to be fascinating to sit down with Bo.
Yeah, well, let me start by saying this, because I had one of the first comments on that video saying that it must have been sort of a nerve-wracking interview to do, and I'm going to guess that it has something to do with some of the subject matter that's discussed, which is obviously the untimely passing of Bray Wyatt. I don't know, Bo. I'm hesitant to make remarks such as this, but as much as I can gauge from a 15-minute interaction with the guy over Zoom, legitimately one of the nicest first impressions I've ever made. The man was so comforting. He was so candid, and just a big smile on his face, even when talking about some really difficult things. So on that end, Bo was so giving and so welcoming, and so I really much appreciate that. And yeah, in terms of what I really took most from this, and I was about to ask him verbatim basically what he told me, and he just sort of read my mind, which is how cathartic this opportunity to play Bo Dallas, brother of Bray Wyatt and Uncle Howdy, has been for him, because this is an opportunity to not only outwardly project his therapy and his grieving, but it's also done in a way that sort of carries on the legacy of his brother. And I have to imagine, based on my conversations for him, like, it must feel really good to mourn in a way that is not only helping you heal, but is also doing something that you know your late brother would be proud of, you know?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And, you know, interviewing wrestlers is always so tricky, because you're crossing between the character and the person. You're laughing because, you know, we both done it for a while, and it's a trick, but that one that one had to be pretty special. And, I love the piece and would recommend anybody. It's up on CBSSports.com right now. Please do yourselves a favor and check it out. Bobby Lashley's back. We'll go a little shift to AEW real quick before we wrap it up. He's an MMA guy. You're an MMA guy. You got to be excited. Bobby Lashley back in the wrestling ring in AEW. What'd you think of the whole thing?
I'm excited for the talent involved more than anything. I think Shelton has been presented just about as well as one could expect. I'm actually really happy with how they've presented Shelton Benjamin over the past few matches that he's had in AEW. I think most fans would agree. The Hurt Business was probably the sort of dissolution of the Hurt Business was one of WWE's bigger booking mistakes in the last several years, particularly with how much of a role they played during the pandemic Thunderdome era of WWE. To not see that rewarded in front of the live audience, I think was very disappointing. And also, I would argue that Bobby Lashley was one of the bigger, better represented stars of the Vince McMahon era that was sort of cast to the side once Triple H kind of took over the creative reins there. So I'm happy for those guys. I'm happy for Shelton, MVP, and Bobby Lashley that they can do a chance to do something that they deserved to do and the fans deserve to see. Overall, as it sort of pertains to the bigger picture of AEW, and thinking about this every week hurts me because AEW was so integral to my sort of recapturing my imagination for pro wrestling, much like Ring of Honor was for you, as you were talking earlier today.
Now we got to go real quick.
I have a hard time telling what I'm supposed to focus on in WWE. In AEW. So
it'll be fun. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah,
hey,
I hope so, man.
Where can everybody find you, brother?
CBSSports.com/MMA/WWE/boxing. That's where all that work is. YouTube, Shaq Wrestling, SHAK Wrestling, Shaq MMA. Interviews just about every week with UFC stars, WWE stars, TNA, AEW, you name it. It's there. Go check out the Bo Dallas video. It's a good one.
Yeah, and we got to do this again. I think we could have done 2 hours and without a sweat.
Yeah, hey, man, that was me worried about getting in enough sleep, but ask me again, I'll be there. I'll do the full thing with you, my man.
Hey, that sounds great. Thank you for joining us. Really do appreciate it. And, guys, thanks for joining us here on the Mark Hoke Show here on KDAWN 101.5 FM, the talk of Las Vegas. Make sure you follow us everywhere. Just look up the Mark Hoke Show. Go to markhokeshow.com. We'll see you next week. Have a good one, Las Vegas.
Want more of The Mark Hoke Show? Follow us on Twitter at Mark Hoke Show, like us on Facebook at The Mark Hoke Show, and visit markhokeshow.com to keep up with everything happening with the show. And remember to check out all of our archive shows on YouTube at The Mark Hoke Show and download our podcasts at markhokeshow.podbean.com and all your favorite podcast outlets. So join The Mark Hoke Show family today, and thanks for listening.